Welcome, welcome. Everyone have a great night last night? Good. We're excited to have you here. Welcome to America Fest, our third year in a row. We're excited. I don't know if you guys know this. We're starting a few minutes early here, but I don't know if you know about the whole history of how we got here. I'll give you the quick crash course. So Turning Point USA, I was Chief Operating Officer on the C3 side, our 501c3, which is Turning Point USA, which is probably the most recognizable brand for, I don't know, about 6-7 years. And we had started building these events. They're student-based events. And the whole reason why we started building student-based events was because that's a great place to recruit. About a third of all our activists at Turning Point USA come in through events. So when people say, why do you do events? Why do you do big events? Well, I mean, you know this, you're here, but they're exciting, they're fun, and it's oftentimes a place where people can come for the first time to ever engage politics. First time ever to engage activism. And so it's really critical that you do really good events. And the conservative movement sucks at events. So we wanted to make them better and cooler and more fun. And so that's when you walk in and it's kind of a mind-blowing thing with what our events team does with the big stage and everything else. We have more LED than Taylor Swift has. It's to make it fun and to make it cool. And the cool part is because you're attending, you're helping offset that cost. So it's a cost neutral thing. And our donors can spend money on actually getting activism out into the field, which is really cool too, because a lot of organizations spend donor money on events. We don't. We spend donor money on actually getting out into the field. So that started, our big event started in Florida. It was called our Student Action Summit. And we ended up doing that every year at the end of December, and then we realized Arizona is the most important state in America, right? And we'll talk a little bit about that. And so 3 years ago, we made the decision to move it to Arizona and to host our largest event in America here. And then over the course of the last year and a half or so, about that, we've really grown at Turning Point Action, our C4 side. So I moved over. We have a really great team at the C3 side that's able to handle all of the things that we do here now. And now we're focused on activism, on grassroots activism out in the community, doing the things that the Republican Party should be doing, right? So today we're talking about Arabella Advisors and Democracy Alliance. So this is not just Arabella, but in the most concise way possible, I'm going to rush through probably about 3 years of research and making it as simplified as possible. If you've seen this presentation from me before, every time that you hear this and you think about it, I think something unlocks, right? Which is, oh my gosh, that's how they're doing things. Oh my gosh, this is the infrastructure that the left has used to start annihilating states like Arizona and annihilating states like Georgia. And this is the gospel in which every donor in America has to hear it in order for things to start to change. Because if they do not hear it, and there may be some donors in this room, people who have given money to the Republican Party, the terrifying part is none of this has been built on our side almost entirely, right? And so we are probably about 20 years behind the 8 ball, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't start today. So my hope is that you'll take away from this and go, my eyes have been opened a little wider today, and I'll leave here being able to tell and express to my Central Republican Committee, my state party chairman, if you show up, if you ever see Ronna McDaniel, tell her you should probably know a little bit more about this. And donors, every donor, small or large, right? Down to those who give $5 a month to a candidate or max contributions to a candidate. If you do not understand this process, there's no way for us to replicate it. So I hope that you will leave here knowing a little bit more and be able to engage a little bit more in the process and then decide for yourself that, hey, we need to be building these things out in the public. So without further ado, we're going to jump in here. And our good friend Kevin Laracy that's in the back here, this is his favorite quote, one of my favorite quotes, we actually train our staff at Turning Point Action to The Art of War. Who here has read The Art of War? If you want to be a political genius in modern America, I would suggest reading Art of War and really internalizing it. And I'm not a big, utilizing other cultural examples to implement. This is all about how to win in battle, right? One of my favorite quotes: know the enemy and know yourself in 100 battles, and you will never be in peril. If ignorant of both your enemy and yourself, you are certain in every battle to be in peril. Let's take ourselves back to 2004. Who was alive in 2004? You look pretty young. We actually have to ask that question at Turning Point USA now, so. It's part of the presentation. No, I'm just teasing. You guys all look pretty young. So 2004, what was going on in 2004? Shout it out. An election for who? Yeah, it was Bush versus who? Versus who? Mr. Hines himself, right? What happened in the state of Colorado? Oops. Does anybody remember? Colorado went red. Right? Who here's from Colorado? Oh, man, I'm so sorry. No, I'm just kidding. Colorado went red. When you think of Colorado, what's the first thing you think of? Communist, right? Skiing. Well, I'm glad that you still have a rosy view of Colorado. But Colorado, in our mind, in kind of the modern, in this century, has been not a great place for conservatives, right? Every year it seems like, have you seen the latest congressional map? The state, for the first time, is significantly more blue than it is red, and they're going for the throat on Lauren Boebert. But who won the 2004 election? George W. Bush. So our crunchy, commie, millennial, hippies, hippies, so interesting how hipsters and hippies, history kind of repeats itself. Never thought that George W. Bush, that schmuck, was going to win Colorado. They were organized in the Democrat Party in Colorado. They had made a bajillion phone calls. Colorado was, on the forefront of, releasing marijuana to the world. This was their election. And what happened? George W. Bush gets elected. George W. Bush wins the state of Colorado. And you know what they said? They said, never again. Never again. We have way too many hipster hippies around here. Never again. Way too many Tivas per capita. Never again. So what was the Colorado miracle on that? They called it the Colorado miracle in 2008. What ended up happening? What? It changed. Colorado changed significantly, and a lot of people overlooked a lot because they just credited Obama for a lot of it. But it wasn't Barack Obama alone. It helped. But Barack Obama, when he was running, you know what they said about Barack Obama? That guy's way too liberal. He runs to the left, right? You got to remember, we already forget what was happening back in between 2004 and 2008. Hillary Clinton was supposed to be the nominee. Do you remember that? It was like a sure thing. Barack Obama flies in from the state Senate, U.S. Senator, boom, all of a sudden he's presidential nominee, and he wins the nomination. They tried their hardest with superdelegates, even cheating they couldn't win. Barack Obama wins the nomination, and then he campaigns which direction? To the left. This is your left, right? Yeah. To the left. So has anyone here read the blueprint, the Colorado blueprint? You in Colorado? Okay, read it again. The whole thing. Who here's read the blueprint? Not many. Not many of us. It's okay. Art of War and the blueprint. That's where we're going. 3 tech entrepreneurs created a network of entities to fund campaigns replacing the Colorado Democrat Party. They said never again is a guy like a hick like George W. Bush ever going to win this state. And they said, what we're going to do is we're going to stop trusting the DNC. The DNC is our worst enemy. This is their theory, right? They said the DNC is our worst theory. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create, I don't have a laser pointer on here, the Colorado Democracy Alliance, CODA. And this was the network that flipped everything in Colorado from 04 to 08. What was CODA? Does anybody know? Has anybody ever heard of CODA before? Who here considers themselves a pretty in-the-know activist and voter? Guys, come on, have a little more faith in yourself. You're at America Fest, for crying out loud. Like, I don't know, I'm just pedestrian. Maybe this is part of the thing, right? CODA was the infrastructure to build and replace all the things that the Democrat Party said it was doing in Colorado outside of the party. So why replace the party with CODA in Colorado? 1, spending caps limitations. Did you know that in most states there are spending limitations and caps on what the party can and cannot do? 2, and that also is relevant to how much they can fundraise. 2, inefficient leadership. Has anyone ever been to a Republican Party meeting in this room? Raise your hand. Have you? This isn't unique to the Republican Party. Have you ever met an ineffective leader in the Republican Party? Have you ever heard about one? 3, personal agendas. Has anyone ever seen personal agendas come out at a Republican Party meeting? Not unique to our party. Everyone has personal agendas when they show up. 4, apps, and this is the most important key part, absence of permanent infrastructure. What does that mean when I say absence of permanent infrastructure? Let me put something in your brain real quick. How often do you elect a new party chair for your state? Most states, it's every 2 years. Very few, it's 4. Most states, it's every 2 years. How often do you elect a county chairman? Every 1 to 2 years. Let me ask you a question. If in your brain you think it's okay for the Republican Party to be completely in charge of get-out-the-vote operations, starting with voter registration, all the way through chasing ballots to ensure victory during the AB chase or the absentee or early ballot chase, how do you think you do that if you have a new captain of the ship every 6 to 18 months? Did you know the average tenure of a state party chairman in the Republican Party in America is less than 1 year? Did you know we have some states that have had 4 chairmen this year? Yeah. It's crazy, right? So, again, let me repeat this question. Who here has run a business? Can you imagine replacing you and then all of your staff every 6 to 18 months? How successful would your business be? I mean, it's just a stupid question, right? Like, you would never do that. It takes years to build a business. Why would we think that it would take 6 to 18 months to build a business with someone new every time? Your vision as a chair would be different from your vision as a chair, which would be different from my vision as a chair. And we would trust that person to completely rebuild the machine every 6 months? By the way, how long does it take to raise money? It's just a numbers thing, right? It's just it's like gravity. It's like Newton, right? This is Newton stuff. There's only so much time you have to raise money. There's only so much time you have to build things. Democrats figured this out. Democrats also figured this out in Colorado as well. This was part of their essence of existence, which was, Winning elections was the sole focus. This is straight from the book. Activist leaders agreed to set aside opinions on specific issues in order to prioritize winning Colorado. This is from Jared Polis. Does anyone know who Jared Polis is? You don't? He's a communist. He's also happens to be the governor of Colorado. But Jared was just this pencil-neck, geeky tech guy who was part of this group that overthrew the Colorado Democrat Party, right? So you have these guys, 3 guys that all helped contribute to this, overthrow the Democrat Party, pencil-neck geek. This guy, if you would have gone on this guy 15, 20 years ago and been like, this guy's going to be the governor of Colorado, people would have laughed. He would have laughed at himself. Now he's the governor of Colorado. This is what he said. All participants checked their political agendas at the door. There was never any policy discussed. There were never any issues discussed. This was simply a group of people who believed that all of our issues, and regardless of what they were, what our differences were, would be better represented by Democrats. I don't refer to them as a Democratic majority even when it's in the quote. Democrats in the majority, which ended up laying the foundation for what we know now as Democracy Alliance, which is now the national operating system for CODA. So what do? So CODA, now Democracy Alliance, dedicates to ensure function-specific entities are operational in each key target state. This started with their test run in Colorado, which was, at one point, Colorado was really looked at as a swing state. Democracy Alliance, how a secretive group of donors help sets the progressive agenda. Not so secret, this is 2014. We've just been asleep at the wheel. We have been nowhere. Who here has really thought about Democracy Alliance before coming into this room? You don't wake up every morning and write, kill Democracy Alliance on your mirror and lipstick? This has been around for a decade plus. This is Vox, I think. Yeah, Vox. Yeah, this is Vox. Vox, we're having to rely on Vox, liberal outlets, to write up about Democracy Alliance. So this isn't secret. So what do? They start breaking them legal, data, tech, get out the vote operations, voter reg. Get out vote operations includes ballot chasing, fundraising, everything the Democrat Party said it was doing, but they knew was not actually doing effectively in Colorado. They took away from them. And they built out organizations that handled each one of these things. Quote, this is from the book. Obama won re-election because he drove, I don't think this is from the book, actually. This is from, Kevin, where's this from? Yeah, that's on the next slide. Obama won re-election because he drove deeper into his ideological base than any Democrat ever had. Campaign largely ignored the middle. And instead used Catalyst data to wring out every possible far-left vote that they could. Catalyst is the system that they use, the data analytics system that they use to identify voters. While Romney pivoted to the middle after primaries, by the way, every single moderate you will ever talk to in the Republican Party today says, we have to go back to the middle. We have to go to the center. Trump's too radical, right? You hear this every single day, right? Okay, this is actually what happened in the Democrat Party, and they don't do that at all. While Romney pivoted in the middle after the primaries and tried to attract moderate independent voters, Obama used data to create a bigger base. Obama's message was a leftist message, even during debates. The idea was to drive turnout on the far left, the x-axis, and to identify Americans on the far left who would usually be unmotivated to vote. The far left campaign messaging Obama was not a mistake. It was part of the plan. Who's Barbara Freed? Have you ever seen this? Have you seen her on Tinder or Bumble? I think she's single. A lot of professors are. No offense. No offense to professors in here. I hope we don't have any educators in here that take offense to that. Who's Barbara Freed? Sam Bankman-Fried's mom. Oh. She spawned the spawn of Satan. So she must be Satan. Barbara Freed runs an organization called Mind the Gap. It's actually a network of multiple organizations that basically lays out the entire pathway for what the Democrats should be doing as a whole across the country. This is the oversimplification of what she does, but I'll save us from reading this entire thing. I'm just going to read the top. This is from a very public, very accessible piece of literature that was put out to give Democrats an idea of what they should be doing in all the leftist organizations. Our efforts will target all four, this was, I think, ahead of 2020. Our efforts will target all four levels of races with the greatest weight given to the presidency. Hence, we are prioritizing battleground states, in particular the 5 most likely tipping point states: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Florida, and Arizona. Ugh, I just got chills on my back. Democrats, for years, have identified what states they can basically walk into and screw over using the Democracy Alliance model. On our side, we're not even debating what states are a priority. It's horrifying. It's truly horrifying. I'm going to tell you this. I didn't lead with this. I'm a member of the Republican National Committee. I got elected to represent the state of Arizona to the RNC. It is a miserable job. We have about 40 other members of the RNC that are here. The good guys are here. That's how you know a good guy. That's how we're kind of, if they show up here, then they're probably good. We are hitting our heads up against brick walls at RNC meetings. We're not even debating what the priorities are and the priority states are. You know where Chairwoman McDaniel is spending her money? In California and New York and stupid places and Palm Springs. I'm telling you, it is so frustrating when you've just taken this presentation and you look at this witch and her son that just injected literally billions of dollars worth of political muscle into the left intentionally. Obviously, it's intentional, right? It's her son. She's one of the head honchos that tells people what to do. They are strategizing against us, and our side seemingly doesn't even care. Let's look at Michigan. So Colorado, they tested it out. Donors on the left were like, I'm not so sure. Let's see how this works out in other states. Kevin, who's in the back here, just want to identify him. He's a patriot. He's worked on this for a long time. This is a research he and his team have done in Michigan. So what they did was they broke down all of the spending in Michigan in 2022. Not just your traditional political spending, meaning the money that was contributed through the Republican Party and for all the candidates, not just Democrat Party and all the candidates. We're talking about everything from top to bottom, every candidate in the party, all the way down to every C3 that is center-right versus center-left. Every political or potentially political dollar that came in through that state. C3, C4s, PACs, we'll get into all of this in a second. Michigan. Is Michigan an important state? Why? Trump won it in 2016, right? After Trump wins in 2016, don't you think that the Republican Party would have been like, oh my gosh, this is an opportunity, right? And actually, I think that's why people were excited, because Ronna was from Michigan, and they moved her over to RNC, and we're like, oh, we'll focus more on Michigan. No, we have not. This last cycle, just in 2022, and this is every dollar, mind you, so this includes every cent that the Kochs have poured into the state, every cent that all these big organizations, school choice, everything that gets poured into the state of Michigan, the Democrats' total raise 2-1 in Michigan. And this is really what's the most critical part when you look at this. Look at these graphs right here. Out of state's the dark blue, in state's the light blue. Where's the money coming from? On the Republican side, out of state is dark red, in state is light red. A majority of dollars spent on the Michigan races in Michigan came from Michigan for the Republicans. On the Democrat side, It's almost 75% in most cases. In this case, it was 2/3 was from out of state. Cue Sam Bankman-Fried, right? When you look at the breakdown in Michigan, this is the most critical part. And I'm sorry, I don't think I have a laser on here. This is the most critical part right here, the cost per vote. Democrats overall, per the research that was conducted, are spending, and this is all across the country. It's worse in some states. Arizona, it's about 10x. Psycho. In Michigan, where they poured money into it, it's a key target state, should be a focus. You're chairwoman from the National freaking Committee for the Republican Party for Michigan. 3-to-1 dollars spent. Or 3-to-1 spent per vote. What this data all comes together and identifies, it is cheaper to turn out the base of low propensity voters than it is to persuade independents, just in general. That is what the Democrats have figured out. They figured this key out years ago. Our side, all we talk about is what? Move to the middle. Talk to high propensity independents. If I can just win you over and you are a regular voting independent, we're going to win the election. Wrong. Wrong. That's not the data that the Democrats have worked on for decades. Have you ever heard of America Votes? I've got Charlie talking about it all the time now. So if you listen to his show regularly, you'll hear America Votes all the time. And we're obsessive about America Votes now, because if you look at America Votes, you'll realize it's an infrastructure. In Michigan, again, we're still focused on Michigan, raising hundreds of millions of dollars to distribute to dozens of organizations. So question, what does Democracy Alliance do? Democracy Alliance organizes all these different groups together. Some you've heard of, some you've never heard of before. They each essentially employ a few dozen employees typically. And what do? They make sure people turn out the vote. This was in 2020. Their prior year, if you've never read a 990, let me tell you guys are all at America Fest. None of you raised your hands to think that you're like supreme activists, but you are. You're all America has, so please get used to it. You know, if you've most people don't know about what a 990 is, right? Make this part of your lexicon. A 990 is the document. Who here's an accountant in accounting? What's a 990? I'll just ask you. It's a nonprofit tax return. It has to be made public, right? So all of this information, it has to be made public a year after it's filed. It's a whole thing. You can pay to keep it secret, all that stuff. It's crazy, but most people post these things because you get a really bad rating as a nonprofit if you don't post your 990 or make it available to the public. The 990 tells you everything about what's going on the left. Turning Point posts 990s. It tells you where they spend their money, the people that are spending the most. Oh, thought I was in trouble there. This 990, prior year to 2020, this group had $30 million come in. All of a sudden, $245 million come in. You want to guess what their 990 is going to look like next year? My guess is it's probably going to be close to $1 billion. So what do? They set up this collaborative effort, distributing all this money in all these different organizations that focus on everything from lawfare to get out the vote strategies, ensuring that paper ballots get put into boxes, or in their best case scenario, the Democrats' wet dream, no paper ballots. And they're chasing ballots. You know, they're voting by phone and voting in public on electronic. George Soros quietly donated $140 million in 2021. We know that his impact is significantly more than that through the infrastructure that they built. America Votes, this C4, I mean, this is all public stuff, right, guys? You can find this at Google. All of us are sitting at home just living normal lives. This is going on. So let's talk about Arabella. So we talked about democracy lines. Let's talk about Arabella now. Arabella Advisors, the philanthropic consulting company that guides strategy, advocacy, impact investing, and management for high-dollar left-leaning nonprofits and individuals. Arabella provides clients with a number of services that ease their operations and enable them to enact policies focused on environmentalism and every other psychotic left-wing thing on planet Earth. Have you ever heard of this guy? Eric Kessler. He's kind of like, he kind of looks like to me like Homer Simpson with glasses in real life. Clinton alum. He ran, post the Clinton era, the largest C4 on the left. So he was the guy. So remember, again, I know many of you weren't alive in 2004. You were just babies. You were in diapers, most of you. Right? Yeah. Yes. You're supposed to say you were. But this guy, Eric, ran the League of Conservation Voters. Remember all the environmentalism, the crunchy stuff, all this stuff? This connects to Colorado. Remember all this stuff in the early 2000s? That was because these guys. A lot of this came through these guys and how they were influencing voters. He ends up founding Arabella in 2005, becomes the president of the Windward Fund. Who here's ever heard of the Windward Fund? We're going to get into it. Founded the New Venture Fund. Ever heard of the New Venture Fund? Arabella ends up managing 4 nonprofits that serve as incubators and accelerators for a range of other left-of-center nonprofits. These include New Venture Fund, which we just talked about, 1630 Fund, that's probably the one you've heard of. 1630 Fund, you heard of it? It's okay if you haven't. It's all right. Just shake your head this way or this way. Hopewell Fund and Windward Fund. These are the numbers in 2020. These numbers went up in 2022, and you better believe it's going to go up in 2024. I don't know if you've seen the economy, but inflation is a real thing. It's going to be probably crazy. And not to mention, Windward Fund and Hopewell Fund have grown significantly since that time. What do these people do? This is a great thing. Again, you Google Arabella, you can find this pretty easily. This was put out by a group. This is just a breakdown of things that we know between basically their inception to 2019 of things that they were responsible for. I want to focus on one. So each of these funds are C3s. They're 501c3s, which means what? They're tax deductible, like Turning Point USA. They're tax deductible. They're charities. Right? Hopewell Fund, Windward Fund, New Venture Fund, 1630 Fund. How much time I got left? How much time I got left, Ben? Okay, we're going to rush. 221 million, 93 million, 2.3. But let's focus over here on Hopewell. See that first group? These are all things that they do. These are all organizations that they've been responsible for. Has anyone ever heard of the illustrious organization, the NFL Players Coalition? Have you heard about it? It's not a real thing. You know, as Caroline would tell you, Caroline Wren, up here in the front, would tell you, as seen on Steve Bannon, as seen traveling across the country, she would tell you, these are just websites. They're made up. They're who's you, what's these, who's. That's my favorite quote from Wolf of Wall Street. NFL Players Coalition, what did it do? Ever heard of a guy named Colin Kaepernick? Yeah. Do you remember this whole thing? Right? I'm making this very real. The whole kneeling on the field thing and all that stuff. That was them. They spent millions of dollars to infiltrate the mind of the average American, particularly those under the age of 40, into thinking that it was perfectly acceptable to kneel on the field during the national anthem. That's all they did. They were really obsessed with it. Soros really loved that. So they're like, oh, we'll spend millions of dollars just infiltrating the mind. Wasn't an organization. They didn't set up a new C3. They set up a website. And then they proceeded to spend millions of dollars through the Hopewell Fund to infiltrate the mind of the average American. And they've done this over and 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 over. You get the point. Our side can't even get together and decide if we're pro-life or not. What is amalgamated bank? Ever heard of this? So all these different organizations have to shuffle money around as freely and openly as possible, right? They have to move quickly. They're C3s. They move money in between. Arabella Advisors is a for-profit private institution. So none of this, so anything that the C3s do ends up on a 990. What does Arabella have to report? Zilch. Nothing. It's a private company. It's a for-profit institution. They can take money in, they can send money out. It's just like it's an advising company. So this is where I want to take a pit stop, because this is going to really hurt your head for a second. My kids love the movie Matilda, the new one that they just came out. And it's like, kid looks like he's about to blow, his mind's going to explode. So this is the most simple way that we can possibly break this down and how they do what they do. What does Arabella do? At the end of the day, what does Arabella do? They actually spend their time on two things. They manage the funds, which we just have talked about extensively, that are scary and that should literally keep you up at night, on how they're manipulating your children's mind and your own mind without you realizing it, because that's how they use the media. So the media is a direct side product. It's actually a side product of all that money spent that I just went through on that last slide. But they do one thing that's really important with donors. And those of you that are donors in this room, you may be aware of this. Family foundations and the long impact, lasting impact that family foundations have within America as a donor community. You can do two things essentially when you die, right? One is you can will all your money to someone, something, to charitable organizations. Or the better option is you set up a family foundation and your progenitors go on, and if you trust them to maintain your political apparatus, they will go on to manage your money forever and ever and ever, and it can continue to accrue what? Interest, right? So that money actually becomes 10 times more effective than if you just cut a check to basically an organization when you die, which is how most people end up spending their money, unfortunately, before they die. They end up just cutting all their money. It's way better to have an Alex Soros manage all of your funds for the rest of your life and his children and their children and their children forever. Do you see the impact? The left has made a cognizant effort to set up family foundations that continue to build and leave behind billions of dollars for leftist functions for the rest of American history, however short that's going to be now for us. That's up to us in this room. So what they do is they take that, and between the network of family foundations that are worth a lot, and individuals like George Soros and big players, they end up funding the funds that we've seen, and that's where you come to this point right here. Those funds fund typically psycho donor projects, like I just took you through with Colin Kaepernick. They do many of those. That's how they manipulate the media. And those special projects essentially create for-profit entities that help build those things. That's everything from tech, everything that we just talked about that Democracy Alliance loves. Tech to applications, to GOTV operations, to voter registration websites. Ever heard of vote.org? Right? That's embedded in almost every centrist or center-left website in America, every for-profit business in America to collect data, including Snapchat, all the way down to here. I want to stop right there. I want to go back over to the left side here, or my right side, my left, your right. Democracy Alliance. What they do is they take large donors and they basically put them in front of a room just like this, right? You are all donors. And I pitch you, and then you invest into very critical things. And Democracy Alliance is who puts the guardrails up. And they say, and they make sure your get out the vote operation in Arizona isn't going to get overfunded or underfunded, right? Your voter registration organization isn't going to get overfunded or underfunded in Michigan. And they go through every single one of these things, making sure, essentially, that every one of those operations is fully funded, but not overfunded, to make sure that the effectiveness of every dollar spent as best as possible in these states. Very smart. Very smart. Meanwhile, Tim Scott spent $40 million that just evaporated on our side. That's what ends up funding the C3s, C4s, and ultimately PACs to a lesser level. Vast majority of C3s and C4s on their side. They continue to fund those for-profit entities as well. Everything from data. I mean, they have literally dozens of tech companies that operate to build better data, better get out the vote operations for all these different groups. They need it. They have to have it. There's a need for it because all the money that's coming into these C3s and C4s. What do they turn around and do with all this big dollar money, family foundation money, George Soros money, large donor money? Those for-profit entities get set up, and then what can for-profit entities do, like Arabella? They can work with anybody. So those services end up turning around and, they help campaigns, and they help the Democrat Party where they need to. But the Democrat Party is low on the totem pole. They're the recipient of this entire infrastructure. The Democrats largely have a rule. The only way you can survive, you can run for office, small dollar donors come in. That is it. That is how we know you don't suck, right? Number one. And number two, if you touch our large dollar donors, you are cut off from data for good. We'll get into that in just a second. Because large dollar donors have to go where? To get out the vote operations, to voter registration, to ballot chasing, to legal. Because we can limitlessly spend in C3s and C4s. These guys cannot, right? So if you think about taking too much and big money for PACs that just do basic stuff for candidates, you're dead. You're out. We're going to kill you. This is what happened to Bobby Kennedy. You want to know why RFK is running as an independent? They cut him off. They said, absolutely not. You're not going to take big dollar donors away from the Democrat Party and run as a Democrat. So we're going to cut you off from data. And so you know what they've done? Data, they make freely and openly accessible to everyone to make this entire thing work. That's the brain of the operation. The heartbeat is the bank that allows money to move quickly and rapidly between all these different entities. This is what they built over the last 25 years. And it's infrastructure. This isn't left or right. What I'm showing you is infrastructure. So where do we go from here? I'm going to tell you, I'm going to just whip through this real quick, and then we'll do some Q&A for the last few minutes here. Building the ballot-chasing army, building this on our side is imperative. And you would look at this and you go, oh man, we're never going to get there. No, we're going to get there. We're going to be able to do it. But it requires a basic understanding of what's happening. Again, that quote, that Art of War, Sun Tzu quote, right? If we don't know what the other side is doing, how are we going to win? The number one thing that every single person here can do is dedicate yourself in your community. This starts at the very local level. This starts in your neighborhood. Building this infrastructure with smaller donors, with smaller money, can happen on your street. You can do this. We can do this. We got to get better leadership in the Republican Party to subjugate the Republican Party the same way the Democrats did. The Democrats realized we have to have leadership that says we can't do it all. Does that make sense? It's really basic. The bad guy in the Republican room today is the person who says they can do it all. That is how you will know when you leave this room, a bad person will tell you they can do it all. A bad person will tell you a campaign can do it all. They cannot. There's no campaign in America, if they target it with this approach, that is safe from the Democrats. I actually don't believe that Jesus himself could run and win in some of these states. And I'm not saying that, in a way that is, I'm trying to paint a picture here, right? Ronald Reagan could come back from the grave and not win, right? George Washington could come back from the grave and not win. Trust me, they don't love Mount Vernon. So this is where we're at. So what I want you to do, I think about this, and we're going to do a little Q&A. I think we've got a couple mics to run here. I want you to think about, how can I go home from here and make an impact on my local Republican Party, starting at the precinct level, to the county level, to the district level, all the way to the national level? Am I going to bang pots and pans and let the Republican Party continue to operate this way? Or am I going to make an impact? Every single person here, every single one of you is empowered to make an impact. You can do this. But it requires you to not give up, not shut up, and say, I'm expecting a better, smarter way to run the party. Better, smarter way to run the conservative movement. So with that, I'm going to open up the Q&A, and we'll go a little bit over time, to make up for it. And we got some runners here, so I'm gonna point, and then we're gonna go mic. We'll start at the back of the room because we got a mic, and then guys, we got right up here, right in the front.
Two things.
Please.
First of all, as Friday, I was a deputy registrar for naturalization in the county and tried to get this woman to vote. She spoke in broken English, and she said, someone has already come to my home and registered me to vote. Yeah. Secondly, as a black American.
So on that topic, before you get to your next thing, who do you think came to her door? Do you think it was the DNC? No, it was an outside organization that's funded through this infrastructure. That their entire job is to go to new voters, probably specifically new citizens, to register them to vote.
And secondly, as a black American, listening to the chatter on YouTube, there are so many black people in this country that are livid with the Democratic Party and what they've done to the black community. How can the RNC be proactive and say to the black community, your vote counts, you're not slaves, and we welcome you into our party?
So that's great. Thank you so much. And so in the context of this presentation, I'll tell you exactly how the left is approaching it, right? Because they're doing the same thing. What we should be doing in the black community, they're doing in the veterans community, for example. Okay? And now let me explain this. Veterans have largely been what? Conservative and Republicans, right? Black Americans have been largely what? Democrats. What we should be doing in the black community, and this is what's necessary. You know what the left does? They have entire organizations that are dedicated specifically to chasing low propensity ballots of independent and Democrat veterans, and they go to their door and they say, you're right, you're smart, you're great. Let's help you vote as a Democrat, even though nobody in your community does. Maybe your entire household's Republican. We're going to help you out. We should be doing that in the black community. But they have entirely funded through this network, through C3s and C4s in particular, voter outreach efforts to those specific communities. So again, this comes back to the conversation. It's like every 6 to 12 months, do you trust a brand new party chair to have all the answers to outreach within any specific community? No. None of these people are good. And maybe if they're good at one thing, they're not going to know everything. You've got to have the organizational prowess. You've got to have the build out in the same way that the left has built it, where we're doing that work. And God bless, there are a few organizations that are out there that are doing this work, specifically in the black community on the conservative side. But the RNC doesn't embrace them. The RNC is not bringing them in and going, God bless you, we love you. Thank you so much for all the work you're doing in the black community to turn them Republican. It's never, God, I'm telling you, I go to these meetings, it never happens. It's never happened once. They hire some schmuck that works at the RNC that says, oh, well, I go on Fox News and talk about this stuff. Right? That's not how you win. How do you win? It's just like this young lady said. You got to go to their door. You got to pay full-time people to go to your door. How is the best way to pay full-time people? C3s and C4s. It's not rocket science, right? Cool. We have a question right up here. Sorry, I had pointed him out. Can we do that? And can we grab him real quick with Mike, and then we'll come back to you.
We have time for one more question.
Yeah, we'll just do 2 more, and then we'll be up here and we'll be around. We'll make this quick.
Thank you very much. So you mentioned that this whole leftist infrastructure started about 25 years ago, long time ago, right?
Started
and
about
they've
20
been
years ago.
building all this organization. Now, we all know that Hillary Clinton has grossly outspent on her campaign than Donald Trump. And yet, Donald Trump has won. What happened? How did he or we pull it off?
So this infrastructure is a great question. So this infrastructure started being built 20 plus years ago in Colorado. So, right? So Donald Trump didn't win Colorado, right? And moved into other states. So they really ratcheted up their impact. They thought Michigan was in the bag in 2016. So this process that I just took through with you, all of those different organizations, they did not have set up in Michigan in 2016. They thought Michigan's never going to vote for Donald Trump. I mean, we're talking about one of the bluest of blue states, right? And then what happened? Donald Trump won Michigan. Why? Because voters in Michigan naturally and organically lifted up, and nobody really liked Hillary Clinton. So we had 2 things working in our favor. Hillary Clinton was unpopular. Donald Trump was more popular than they expected. What did they do? They came in after 2016. They said, oh, no. And everything we just talked about, they built. In addition to that, they laxed all of the election laws in Michigan. Why do you think they did that? To help aid these organizational processes that they've set up. Guys, if you're a donor, 2 things come out of, if you're donating, if you're a big donor and you're donating 50, 60, 70, 80 million dollars for a get out the vote operation, what are 2 things you're going to expect that state does? 1, you're going to say, I want to ensure my money by, number 1, making sure that you have lawfare happening in your state that's going to make it better for our processes to work. The second is they're going to work even harder with local representatives in that state legislature to lax the election code to make their processes work. That's what's happening. One of the things I would say is this is, if we start funding these states in the way that we need to, which is for get out the vote operations, building our own version of Democracy Alliance outside infrastructure, outside of the Republican Party proper, you're going to see an influx of money come into your state to help ensure those things. Guys, we're out of time. I'm so sorry. I'll be around the entire weekend. We appreciate it. God bless you. Have a great time at America Fest.